Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 681. World Shocking. It wasn't an exaggeration. The pressure due to the 500 transformed beasts was enormous, filling everywhere between the heavens and the earth. Even Sky Xians or even Supremes found it uncomfortable, let alone a normal person. General Wan was in awe. He rushed out of his house, occasionally staggering, with only his underwear on, exposing his hairy legs. At the doors, he raised his head, and what he saw made his scalp go numb and him shiver uncontrollably. He couldn't help but yelp, "My goodness!" He saw the skies turning dark in the south. A giant crane with fierce red eyes stared at everything beneath. On its back was a slender woman in white with an imperious aura. With a whoosh, the crane carrying the woman zoomed past, initiating a hurricane that swept across the city. Following immediately was a group of gigantic cranes flying past with so much arrogance and noise. General Wan couldn't help but fall back onto the ground. My goodness! Who dared to mess around with them? There are so much more than last time. What should I do? Wan Wuyan's face paled as he murmured to himself. But before he could recover from the awe, another batch came. One after another, they came. My goodness, endless. General Wan, with only a few clothes on, rushed back into the backyard anxiously. I need to notify the army. Ah! What the? General Wan was horrified to see that all the trained pigeons had died in their cages. They were smashed by the immense pressure, or perhaps, frightened to death. General Wan was dumbfounded and became petrified. On some unknown route, the heartless Venerable Duju was leading dozens of experts of the Superior Supreme. They were all top experts, so they moved fast like wind at full speed. But suddenly, Duju frowned. He waved his hand and the men from the Supreme Golden City immediately hid behind the rocks. Duju raised his head only to see an appalling scene. Revealing an anxious expression had not been revealed in many years. Everyone was confused. But before they could ask, they felt it too. An unprecedented pressure crashed down at them from the skies as they gaped up in awe. Emerging from the horizon was a giant crane followed by a large group of cranes. The elegant figure with such an arrogant aura on the back of the leading crane was too familiar to them. Venerable May. Long crane. And why do they have so many top-level top-rank cranes? Duju's voice almost broke as cold sweat seeped out of his skin. As he saw all the buff men on the back of the cranes, he couldn't help exclaim, "Why are there so many transformed beasts? Where did they come from? How are we a match for them if they have such crushing power?" The always heartless Venerable Duju couldn't help question it with so much fright that his face twitched as his saliva spat out as he spoke. He didn't even finish his lament before he was shocked again and couldn't help collapsing onto the ground. The experts of the Supreme Golden City were also dumbfounded. A batch of pangs followed. They had so much momentum that the clouds were literally torn apart. They could see more men on the back of the pangs. And then more cranes. Pangs. Falcons. Eagles. All the senior members of the Supreme Golden City couldn't help but throw out vulgarities. All the old men could no longer suppress their shock and maintain their gentlemanliness. They were like mummies as they looked at the sky with mouths wide open. My goodness, Master sent us to deal with them? Is it nightmare? When did Tian Fa become so powerful? Third Master, we only have 50 men, how are we going to fight them? All the beasts were gone, but they left behind a shock. Finally, A superior supreme yelled with so much awe. Shut! They want us to kill them? Isn't it suicide? The sound of awe was like a tsunami coming right at the heartless Venerable Ju. His face trembled and his eyelids twitched. He gritted his teeth and said, "Hui, we must send man back to notify the master of the situation. We are completely no match against. Even if it's the 3 holy lands combined." Ju slowly stood up and looked at a slender old man beside him. "Old Fang, you're the quickest. Please return with the message. Tell the master that we need at least 4 more Venerables and 30 more superior supremes. Quick." The old man quickly accepted. He knew it was urgent, so he dashed out like a rabbit without saying another word. He was soon out of sight. "Let's slow down and wait for support. Don't get detected by Tian Fa's forces. We will head for the Silver City after our support is here. Be very careful," Ju commanded, frowning. Meanwhile, the men of the illusory Blood Sea stopped and made the same decision. Jun Xie Bey of the elusive world of immortals did as well. All the experts of the 3 holy lands were left flabbergasted at the sudden flexing of muscles by Tian Fa. They were dazed like ducks in a pond during a thunderstorm. It was indeed a very shocking and terrifying event for many people over the continent. Some forces with good relationships with Blizzard Silver City but didn't yet decided to help were feeling exceptionally fortunate. Good that we didn't go, or we will eventually become feces of the Xian beasts. What a wise decision I've made. On the prairie, a shadowy figure zoomed across the field. It suddenly stopped and finally materialized. It was a skinny person in black. His eyes were lit with fire as he watched the group of beasts above. The sword by his waist seemed to feel his thirst for blood. It suddenly shot out from the sheath by half an inch. Its cold flare was illusory and brilliant. It glittered under the sun, boasting its breathtaking beauty. Autumn Dew Invincible Sword. My best partner. It's finally time for us to kill again. It will be a slaughter. I wonder how many people will be sacrificed to you in the Blizzard Silver City. I always wanted to fight with the Blizzard Venerable Han Feng Shui. I hope my wish is granted." The man rubbed the sword and said gently. But hiding behind the gentleness was a strong cold killing intent. The sword resonated. As it trembled, a flash of bloody red glittered from it. The Autumn Dew Invincible Sword. It must be the supreme killer Chu Chi Hun. He promised to assist Jun Moxie when he had left. Chu Chi Hun remembered his own promise, and it was his top priority. The man that he made his promise to was the only man he recognized as the king of assassins. So the supreme killer continued his journey north toward the Blizzard Silver City. He was very fast. He soon disappeared, leaving behind only his freezing killing intent. Wind howled and thunder boomed. A day later, Xiang City was particularly busy. Jun Moxie was standing in the great courtyard of the house. His face serious and his eyes bloody red. It must be today. 5 days later. It will be the 2nd of February. Destroy the Silver City when the flowers blossom in spring. Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun stood behind Jun Moxie. They could now feel that the thin young man before them was turning into a mountainous figure. His aura seemed to be breaking his body to shoot up at the heavens. Jun Wu was also solemn. It could be felt that his long-gone authority as the Blood General had returned to him. The only difference was that this time, he was not leading a human army to conquer land, nor fighting a secular war shedding commoners' blood. It was a battle of a higher order. The battle in Blizzard Silver City. The battle on the summit of the snowy mountains. Jun Moxie was smart and had many strategies. But he was very aware that he was definitely not as qualified a general as his uncle. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 682. Arriving in Tian Xiang. Such a large-scale battle could only be led by a great general like Jun Xie. This was what it meant to place the correct talents in the correct positions, bringing out the best in everyone. A perfect pairing of talent and abilities. The Dongfang family's troops were all geared up and waiting, and 120 people lined up neatly under the lead of the Dongfang Three Swords. On the other side, 30 experts from the Xikong family stood behind Xikong and Yi, their expressions solemn. Beside him, Duanmu Chao Fan stood, dressed in black with a cold and stiff face. 3 peak experts of the Duanmu family stood behind him. Their backs were as straight as swords, and they only stared forward silently. The moment they knew about the Jun family's plans, they instantly gathered their own experts to provide support. Mu Shuatong revealed an excited expression on his face as he accompanied Han Yen Meng on the side. This day had finally arrived. Xiao family, your day of reckoning has come. This was the Jun family's current force. Dongfang Wen Xian was dressed plainly and sultrily, her face extremely resolute and marked with grief and hatred. Guan Qinghan stood silently beside her as her white dress fluttered noiselessly in the wind. Her hand unwittingly moved to the sword hilt on her waist. Since the war this time concerned her own vengeance, Dongfang Wen Xian naturally needed to witness everything with her own eyes. The old master Jun Tian could not help but sigh lightly as he looked at the vast sea of experts below him. He raised his hand and stroked his beard with a light smile. The rise of the Jun family shall begin with this battle. We must shock the heavens and cause the 4 seas to tremble. The old master Jun had understood this point long ago. But this time, he would not be joining the battle personally. His position as the old master was a concern, and although he wished to tear his hated enemies into pieces with his own hands, he was still of the senior generation. Taking revenge for his sons Jun Wuhui and Jun Wumeng was now the responsibility of his son and grandson. If the old master Jun stepped in personally, it would be somewhat inappropriate. Thus, Jun Tian remained in the capital's main camp. This would allow his son and grandson to fight freely, without worrying about their backs. With him were the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer teams, and the assassination team led by Bailey Luo Yun. In the present Tian Xiang city, such strength was already more than enough to dominate the capital. Dugu Xiao Yi was also left in the Jun family home. The moment the lass heard of this matter, she jumped high into the air, and resorted to crying and begging, hoping to be taken along. In the end, she quietly stayed at home with only a few sentences from Jun Moxie. If you want to enter my Jun family, you must first learn to listen. What's the point of marrying a disobedient wife for? Are you going to stay here? Or are you going to insist on following? The choice is yours. The little lass naturally understood how to choose. Pouting adorably, she nodded with some lingering tears in her eyes. However, her heart was actually secretly filled with endless joy. Waha, this young lady is going to marry into the Jun family soon. It wasn't that Jun Moxie was unwilling to let her follow him, but the battle this time was not going to be as relaxing as imagined. One's life would be in danger at every moment. Dugu Xiaoyi's weak cultivation was truly not worth much in a battle involving tens of millions of experts. Just the smallest attack would be enough to claim her little life. Allowing Dongfang Wen Xian and Guan Qinghan to come along was already the biggest concession Jun Moxie was willing to make. If not for Dongfang Wen Xian still requiring someone to take care of her, he wouldn't even have allowed Guan Qinghan to come. Not only did Mei Shuayan need to participate in the battle, she still needed to control the battle as a whole. There was no way she could be put in charge of taking care of his mother. The sun gradually drifted to the west. In a short moment, it was already the height of noon. Dongfang Wenqing walked up to Jun Moxie and cleared his throat. Moxie, is this all the people we have? Where's your wife? It's such an important battle. Could it be that she's not participating? Dongfang First Master was somewhat worried. Looking at their current strength, one could say that it looked sufficiently powerful. But if they wanted to overrun Silver Blizzard City with this strength, no one would dare to say that they could do it with confidence. The other party was a great power after all, and their strength was extraordinary. Therefore, he could not help but think of the super powerful expert Jun Moxie had introduced to them the last time, Mei Shuayan. Why wasn't she here this time? She'll be here soon, Jun Moxie said with a faint smile. Uncle, this time, I'll let you see the true meaning of Xian beasts coming out of Tian Fa. The oath of the Dongfang family will finally be resolved after this. The real meaning of Xian beasts coming out of Tian Fa? What does that mean? Dongfang Wenqing asked with some confusion. Were there real and false meanings of this? Just at this moment, everyone suddenly felt their visions darken. The warm sun in the sky had disappeared completely. A huge patch of dark clouds, black as the night, had appeared in the sky, completely covering the sun and blotting out the sky. The originally warm and clear sky suddenly darkened, and a wild wind blew without pause, stirring up the sand and dust. What's wrong? What's going on? Everybody felt a powerful pressure suddenly, and looked up at the sky. Only Jun Moxie revealed a knowing smile on his face. He looked upward, and the smile on his face was even brighter than the sun. Woo! The long, low, and dominating cry of a bird rang out, instantly reverberating through the entire sky. Ho! This powerful roar sounded as if 100 million people were shouting together, akin to thunder that had accumulated for 10 years, all bursting out at the same time. Over 99% of the people in Xiang instantly lost their hearing temporarily. Even peak-level experts like Dongfang Wenqing only heard a loud boom, and their minds went blank. Only now did everyone realize that the dark cloud that covered the sky was actually an enormous group of cranes. That powerful momentum and those huge bodies all spoke of one thing only. These large cranes were unexpectedly all peak 9th level Xian beasts. Dongfang Wenqing and the rest could only stare dumbly at the sky. Their brains seemed to have short-circuited at this moment. She was not alone. Everyone else also had the same expressions. Apart from the solitary falcon, even the old Master Jun was dumbstruck by the sight. Atop the large snow-white crane at the front, a female figure could be seen, standing aloof. This person was dressed in a set of snow-white robes, and her long black hair fluttered behind her. Her face was enchanting to look at, and her figure was graceful and exquisite. A light smile hung on her face, and her eyes glimmered slightly as she looked down at Jun Moxie. Apart from Mei Shuayan, there was no one else who could be this captivating. Before this, none of them had managed to guess Mei Shuayan's true status. When they looked at her shockingly grand entrance now, everyone naturally could not help but gasp with shock. The cloud of cranes grew denser and denser, and finally, thousands of flying Xian beasts flapped their wings vigorously atop the Jun family's home. All the dust and dirt in the Jun family home was swept away by the wind, and in an instant, all the surrounding homes were covered in dust. Dugu Xiao Yi and Han Yen Meng both looked up at Mei Shuayan with shock and awe. Their eyes were filled with endless envy and admiration. Sister Shuayan is simply too cool, too beautiful. When will it be my turn to do this? With a light skip, Mei Shuayan dropped down from the back of the crane like a fairy. The crane swooped once across the sky, morphed into a human form, and dropped down as well. Jun Moxie laughed happily and took 2 large steps forward as he spread his arms wide to receive this beautiful piece of jade. However, Mei Shuayan's face was very thin-skinned. With so many people present, how could she allow herself to be hugged? If she really let him hug her like that, where would the face of the boss of Tian go? With another light skip, her body shifted and she landed right beside the young Master Jun, causing him to hug onto thin air instead. Ignoring him completely, she went forward and first greeted the old Grandpa Jun. Then, she went over to donghua Xie and with her face completely flushed red, she mumbled, "Mother, I have returned. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." Her. Donghua Xian's eyes were narrowed into thin strips as she looked at her precious daughter-in-law. She grabbed Mei Shuayan's hands and placed them in her own, as if she didn't want to let them go. The shock in her heart had been completely replaced with happiness. My goodness, so this is what it means for the Xian beasts to come out of Tianfa. Donghua Wenqing's jaws hung wide open as he looked at the huge carpet of Xian beasts before him. Turning around, he grabbed onto his nephew's sleeves. My good nephew, this girl, just what is her identity? What is this grand lineup? You're actually capable of subduing this kind of girl? The Donghua First Master was truly shocked to the core this time. Just what kind of great personage would it take to be able to command tens of millions of peak 9th level Xian beasts? In that moment, Donghua First Master's mind had completely failed him. Donghua Wenjian and Donghua Wendao had also gathered over to get an explanation from Jun Moxie. This matter was too shocking. I've already made it so clear. You still don't understand? Jun Moxie sighed with exasperation. Could it be that you all still can't see that she's Venerable Mei? After saying that, young Master Jun displayed a proud expression as he walked toward Mei Shuayan. The 3 incomparably shocked uncles simply looked dumbly at his back. Venerable Mei, oh my God! Our niece-in-law is actually Venerable Mei, it's really her. Donghua Wenqing's eyes were blank as he mumbled. His mouth was like a hippo that was dying of thirst. Turning his head with great difficulty, he looked at his 2 brothers. I didn't hear wrongly, right? Donghua Wenjian and Donghua Wendao were also having difficulties keeping their saliva from dropping out of their gaping mouths. They stared unblinkingly back at him, unable to utter a single word. On the other side, Mei Shuayan had finally finished with her small talk. Then, raising her voice, she called out, "Everybody come over here." A chorus of cries rang out across the sky as large numbers of hulking men dressed in ridiculous red robes dropped down from the sky. In that moment, it looked like the sky was raining blood. Jun Moxie dashed over like an arrow, taking advantage of the time Mei Shuayan was commanding her Xian beasts. With a well-practiced sneak attack, he hugged her fully. Her body felt like soft sponge that melted into his arms, and a faint fragrance rose into his nose, causing him to feel somewhat intoxicated. Mei Shuayan was about to struggle, but she suddenly felt a warm and ticklish breath by her neck. A mouth was pressed against her jade-like ears, and a voice which carried a familiar warmth passed from her ears into her heart. "You've finally returned. I've missed you dearly." Mei Shuayan instantly felt her body grow soft, and she lost all her resistance. She allowed herself to remain in his embrace. And her face was completely flushed with shyness. In that moment, her beauty seemed unparalleled under the heavens. The sounds of choking could be heard all over the place. The red-clothed beefy men in the air were all gasping and staring in disbelief as Jun Moxie hugged their boss in his arms. Their hearts shook violently, and like huge dumplings, they all tumbled out of the sky and landed heavily on the ground. Apart from Big Bear and a few other beast kings, nobody was an exception. The appearances of these powerful Xian beasts were exceptionally unsightly. This kind of scene was simply too shocking. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 683. Onward to Silver City. The boss that we don't even dare to look at, the godlike figure that we don't even dare raise our heads to talk to, is actually being embraced in the arms of that human youth. Furthermore, she even has a look of extreme bliss on her face, and that adorable and shy expression simply resembled a little bird in love. This was a scene that they would never be able to imagine even if they racked their brains. In fact, none of them would even dare think about such a matter. These simple-minded Xian beasts who had recently finished their transformation instantly lost their abilities to think and plummeted from the sky. Bang, bang, bang. Numerous peak 9th level Xian beasts who hadn't transformed also felt their minds go blank momentarily, and they fell from the sky. The Jun Manor shook heavily as loud bangs rang out unceasingly. Dust and sand flew into the air, along with countless multicolored feathers. Even those that were fortunate enough to keep their minds and stay in the air were also flying unsteadily as they flapped their wings frantically. Violent winds swept through the manor in all directions. This was truly a miraculous sight. After a long time, everyone finally recovered from their shock. Big Bear, Earthcracker, and the rest were incensed, thinking that these people had truly lost their Tian Fa forest's face in front of everyone. They rushed out with black faces, kicking and hollering fiercely. A bunch of useless things. You were all stunned silly by such a simple sight? Hurry up and greet our brother-in-law. Earthcracker was even fiercer, directly repeating the exact words that Big Bear had previously used to abuse him back to the Xian beasts without any hesitation. You bunch of country bumpkins. Useless trash inferior to dog's meat. Why can't you just learn from my casual, elegant, cool, and composed mannerisms? With the scoldings finished, all the beast kings came before Jun Moxie and Mei Shuayan with silly smiles on their faces. Brother-in-law, hee, how are you? And, not bad. Brother-in-law has some meeting gifts for everyone. Jun Moxie smiled happily. The loud chorus of brother-in-law had caused him to feel so happy that even his head felt lighter. In that moment, he waved his hands pretentiously, but he was already gasping endlessly in his heart. My God, there's actually so many of these uncles, and they're all so stalwart and fierce-looking. If there's a quarrel between me and their big sister in the future, wouldn't these guys be biased? Jun Moxie gave a command, and the Jun family servants quickly brought over a large pile of clothing. All of them were full sets, and each set of clothing were specially tailored to a XXL size. It was fortunate that these clothes were super large sizes. When these huge bulking men put them on, they actually fitted extremely well. Each one of them was over 2 meters tall, and their bodies looked swollen with muscles. Even Jun Moxie felt somewhat envious of their build. Although this bunch of fellows was truly too unruly, a number of them directly threw their clothes on the ground the instant they received them. Then, with a schwa sound, they stripped themselves naked. The red robes on their bodies were originally just a single piece of cloth. It was naturally very easy to take them off. with a so sound. Their hairy bodies and tough legs, as well those huge, bulging swinging things were revealed to everyone before they could even turn their eyes away. Grinning happily, they grabbed the new clothes and began to pull them over their bodies. After so many years, they were finally going to wear human clothes. Dugu Xiao Yi and Han Yen Meng screeched and turned their bodies around, shielding their eyes from the terrible sight. Mei Shuaiyan's face darkened, and she turned to stare at Long Crane with a dangerous look. Idiots! Who told you to strip off all your clothing? Long Crane raised his legs and kicked out with fury. What utter disgrace! You've thrown away all of Tian Fa's face. The few who had been kicked on the B*TT stumbled and bared their teeth, but they did not dare to cry out in pain. They blinked innocently, with looks of naivety and confusion on their faces. If we don't take off the red cloth, how are we supposed to wear the new clothes? Long Crane's kicks had been completely merciless, hurting even their bones. Jun Moxie forcefully restrained his laughter, and grabbed a Nike'd man, teaching him how to wear the clothes. His attitude was incredibly affable and nice. That's right. Lift up one leg at a time. Put it in. Raise your leg. Yes. Now pull it up. Don't use too much strength. You'll tear it. After that, hold it like that. Remember, that's the waist of the trouser. Tie it like this. Everyone, this is called a trouser pants. Raise your leg. Put it in. Stretch it out. That's right. No. You need to raise your arm to put on the shirt. Feints. You need to raise your right arm to put it through the right sleeve. Not the other way around. Raise your right arm first. Yes, you're so clever. As for that outer robe, it's the same. Right. Tie the waistband like that. Jun Moxie took a step backwards and looked at the Xian beast brother that he'd clothed. Nodding his head with satisfaction, he raised a proud thumb. Handsome. The Xian beast brother giggled and laughed with red of face as he turned and twisted his body in a manner as if he hadn't transformed yet. Then, he smiled happily and revealed his blade-like teeth. Thank you, brother-in-law. Hee. Brother-in-law is a good person. I like you. Jun Moxie was instantly amused. Long Crane gathered all the transformed Xian beasts together, then used his huge wings to cover them before allowing them to change into their new clothes. In the meantime, Jun Wuyi went over the prepared battle plans with Mei Shuaiyan. Without even thinking, Mei Shuaiyan directly agreed to the strategy. Then, she called Jun Wuyi and Jun Moxie together and faced the Xian beasts. The army this time will be commanded by Third Master Jun Wuyi. His orders are my orders. Anyone who dares to disobey them will be dealt with accordingly. The huge army was as quiet as cicadas in the dead of winter. Nobody dared to make a single sound. Satisfied, Mei Shuaiyan turned around. Then, furrowing her brows lightly, she looked at Jun Moxie. Along the way, we met a few large troops that seemed to be from the Three Holy Lands moving out. As we were afraid of delaying the time, we left them be. We've gathered a huge army, and our momentum is powerful. However, our bases are practically emptied out. If Jun Moxie fell silent for a long time, then shook his head. In your opinion, will the Three Holy Lands dare to take advantage of the fact that I'm not in Xiang to directly destroy the Jun family? Would they have the guts to face the vengeance of our powers, as well as the wrath of my master? Mei Shuaiyan smiled and shook her head. Absolutely not. The Three Holy Lands are riding atop a tiger right now and are finding it difficult to dismount. Without first getting rid of your master, they would never dare touch the Jun family. After all, If such a level of expert hides himself and carries out sneak attacks from the shadows, even venerable realm masters would not be able to escape death. Doing this will directly affect whether their 3 holy lands live or die. Those old bastards are all more sly than foxes. They would only use the smallest price to exchange for the largest benefits. How would they dare to do such a risky thing? Jun Xie smiled smugly. There you go. After that, he turned around and spoke some words to Grandpa Jun. The old grandpa nodded repeatedly and he laughed happily. All the preparations was quickly finished. The Jun family manor was too small a temple and was unable to contain so many powerful Buddhas. With a command from Jun Xie, everyone took their place above the backs of the flying Xian beasts and prepared to set off. Jun Xie originally wanted to hitch a ride with the beauty. However, he was mercilessly kicked down in one move. Then, Mei Shuayan carefully supported Dongfang Wen Xian and Guan Qinghan onto Long Crane's back. Long Crane blinked his eyes repeatedly at this. He felt like crying, but did not have any tears. The others are all carrying one person. Why am I the only one to carry 3? Big Bear chuckled jovially and beckoned to Jun Xie. Brother-in-law, come over here. We 2 brothers can share a seat and chat along the way. The Xian beast crane under Big Bear immediately rolled its eyes. 4th brother bear, ah. My dearest brother, ah. I'll even call you my blood brother if you want me to. Please have mercy on me. Just you alone is much heavier than the combined weight of the 3 people on 3rd brother's back. I'm already having a lot of difficulty carrying you. If another one comes aboard now, this little brother will really fall out of the sky. Help me, ah. Hearing the Bear King calling out to him, Jun Xie was just about to go over to that direction when a huge eagle suddenly landed in front of him. This eagle was the Eagle King, and he was shouting excitedly. Brother-in-law, please come on me. Jun Xie shuddered involuntarily and he nearly ran away. What kind of words were those? Come on me? And there's still a please come on me? This brother's tastes are not that heavy, okay? Not to mention that you're male. Even if you're a female, this brother is still not that desperate. Look at all those thick black feathers on you. Young Master Jun's face turned exceptionally strange, as if he'd been struck by a bolt of lightning. Muttering a word of thanks, he hurriedly jumped atop its back. In the end, he still came atop it. He couldn't not come. The Eagle King had already invited him so earnestly and was even watching him intently. How could he not come? Even if he had to harden his scalp and force it, he still had to come. But truthfully, the moment he came atop it, it truly felt extremely comfortable. As expected of the Eagle King, its back was truly soft. There was only a single word to describe this: satisfying. Soon, all the people that had gathered in the Jun family came on the back of a Xian beast. The number of Xian beasts that had come to Tian Xiang this time was truly not little. Even with one person riding each Xian beast, there were still many Xian beasts with empty backs. The Silver City little princess bade farewell with the close sister Dugu Xiao that she'd come to know well in this time, then happily climbed onto the back of a large crane. Although Han Yen Meng came from a super family and she had experienced many things, this was still the first time that she was going to enjoy the feeling of soaring high in the air through the clouds. This little girl was extremely excited. As soon as she stood on the bird, she took out a fanciful-looking sweet, tore off the wrappings and offered it to the large crane's beak. She wanted to play with the crane, but unexpectedly, she received a glare from its red eyes, causing her to almost fall off in fright. Dugu Xiao pouted and looked upward at Han Yen Meng enviously. Her eyes were red, and it seemed like she was about to start crying. This young lady also want to ride on a big bird and fly into the sky, woo woo. Snorting huffily, she turned around. Big brother Moxie said that I'm going to marry into the family soon. I need to behave more maturely. That Han lass is still a long distance away from matching me. Even if she manages to barely sneak her way in one day, she'll only be a little wife, her status is lower than me. Her. With a loud cry from Long Crane, the entire troop took off. A huge cloud of dust and sand flew high into the air, churning into a sandstorm. Mei Shuayan waved her hand and a thick barrier appeared around her, blocking the wind. With Venerable Mei personally taking care of them, even if the winds were more violent, Dongfang Wen Xian and Guan Qinghan would not feel the slightest movement. The army rose into the air, turned a half circle, and then formed into a flying formation. Then, with a mighty gush, they shot forward towards the north. Their destination, Silver Blizzard City. Old Master Jun looked silently at the huge army in the air, his eyes filled with unspeakable emotion. After some time, he sighed lightly and walked back into the house. Looking at the memorial plates of his two sons and grandsons, he mumbled, Wu Hui, Wu Meng. Mou, Mo Cho, may your spirits be at rest. The debt of your blood is finally going to be avenged. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 684. All the way to the north. Old Master Jun stood silently for a long time, not moving. A bitter smile hung on his face. But the moment he thought about his grandson Jun Moxie, his face turned a shade warmer. He thought about the words his grandson had said to him before he left again. Grandpa, our Jun family is about to set off to attack the Silver City with all our strength. The moment we leave, our Jun family base will be left completely defenseless. However, the world knows that my master is residing in the Jun family residence. There aren't many who would dare to try anything funny. The only ones who would really dare to make a move would be the forces of the three holy lands. Of this point, you need to prepare yourself mentally. However, Grandpa need not be too overly worried. Even if the three holy lands really make a move, they will definitely have some reservation in their hearts and would not dare to be too brazen. Thus, they will most likely employ all kinds of tactics to test our Jun family's reaction. Grandpa, with your rich experience, it shouldn't be much of a problem to deal with them. If they don't come, then so be it. But if they really showed up, you need to act domineering. The more overbearing we show ourselves to be, the better. No matter what, we must not show any weakness to the enemy. Before Shui Yan and I die, and more importantly, before my master shows himself, even if all the forces of the three holy lands are standing in front of you, they will not dare touch a single hair on your head. But the moment you show any weakness, they will instead think that we do not actually have the strength to stand up to them. At that point, they will not have any more reservations. I think that Grandpa should know this point very well too. What appears to be strong might be weak. And what appears to be weak might be strong in reality. The more arrogant we are, the better. In any case, you can handle everything as you deem appropriate. I trust that Grandpa will be able to settle them. As long as the Jun family holds on until our return, everything will pass. These were the words that Jun Moxie had said to Grandpa Jun after listening to Mei Shuayan's words. At the same time, the terrifyingly huge number of Xian beasts suddenly appearing in Xiang City had caused a great deal of anxiety in the royal chambers of the imperial palace. Although the Xian beasts had only landed for a moment and then left immediately, the commotion that would arise from it would take several months to calm. Everyone clearly knew now that Jun Moxie's relationship with the #1 beast king of Tian, Venerable Mei, was not just some empty rumors. They were actually real. To go against the Jun family was now no different from going against the entire Tian forest strength. Who would dare to provoke such a terrifying power? Even the 3 holy lands needed to first consider long and hard before doing anything. The emperor could be said to have suffered his fill this time. Firstly, Jun Moxie had directly created a huge commotion and humiliated his most able helper right before his doorsteps for 10 days before executing the latter. Yet, he as the emperor did not even dare make a single noise. This was already enough to infuriate anyone to death. Who would have thought that after that, Jun Moxie would continue to humiliate him, burying his empress with Yi Guhan? This was simply putting a huge stain on his name, one that could never be washed away even after he was buried in the ground. This was the equivalence of putting a striking green hat on his head, one that could never be taken off. This green hat was so bright that even his ancestors would be shamed by him. The 2 consecutive rounds of humiliation nearly caused this Xiang emperor to break down. The thing was that Jun Moxie had not even mentioned half a word about him while he was doing these things. Although everyone knew that Jun Moxie was humiliating the Xiang emperor, he had not done anything that was in direct confrontation to him. In any case, even if he did, nobody would have dared to say anything. Did they think too cheaply of their lives and grew tired of living? The Jun family young master would kill someone if they so much as looked at him the wrong way. No, not just kill, he would peel off the skins of those who offended him. If 100 people came, he would flay 100. Who would be so bored as to seek their own death? All these caused the emperor to feel as if his heart was being fried in a pot of boiling oil. Yet, he couldn't say a single word. He couldn't possibly stand out and say, Jun Moxie, your actions are directed at me. Wouldn't that be the same as pouring a bucket of shut over his own head and insulting his own reputation? If he didn't say anything, although the entire world would know that this was the reality, he could still pretend that those were nothing but lies and rumors spread by his enemies. But the moment he responded, it would be proving that it was true. There would be no more room to twist the opinions of the world. The entire world was watching an emperor of a country, eating coptis root mutely. It was extremely bitter, but this emperor could not even make a sound. These few days, he had been brooding endlessly and was considering sending some experts out to secretly dig out that hateful lover's mound. When Jun Moxie returned, the grain would have already turned into cooked rice. At that time, there wouldn't be anything he could do about it. But who would have thought that before Jun Moxie did anything, an even fiercer power would appear? That was a power that dared to oppose even the 3 holy lands Tian forest. Dear heavens, ah! Great earth, ah! How are people supposed to live like that? This discovery caused the incredibly vexed emperor to cancel his arrangements yet again. If it was only a matter of offending the young Master Jun, he believed that with the old Master Jun around, the old man would definitely not sit back and watch his grandson kill the emperor. Even if they were unhappy, the Xiang kingdom still belonged to those surnamed Yang. But if they infuriated the Tian forest, that would no longer be an issue involving the Xiang royal family, even the entire Xiang kingdom would be wiped out. Just like that, the esteemed emperor could only stamp his feet endlessly with rage. Yet he was unable to do even a single thing. He was angered to the point where he nearly vomited blood every single day. However, he was unable to vent even a single bit of that anger. There wasn't even a single place for him to vent his anger. The commotion caused by the Xian beasts had not calmed down yet when three groups of people who came from different directions slipped silently into Xiang city. One of the groups was led by a young man dressed in green. This young man was of tall stature, and his bearing was elegant. He had an air about him that caused him to stand out from the common people. His face was handsome like a crown jade with delicate features, and his lips were red, like painted cinnabar. At this time, he looked toward the familiar sight of Xiang city with a bitter smile. I've returned to Xiang city. It wasn't easy for me to leave this place. But in such a short time, I've been sent back again. And I'm going to face the powerful rival that I wanted to meet least, the most frightening enemy in my heart. Although, he's also the rival that I thirst for the most. Jun Moxie. If you're not in Xiang, even if I win this time, what meaning would it have? This person was Li Yuran. After climbing onto the Eagle King's back, Jun Moxie flew toward the north at high speeds. It was only now that Jun Moxie finally knew just how far away the Silver Blizzard City was from Xiang. Even with these flying Xian beasts traveling at the shocking speed of 10.000 li a day, going all out, they still needed 2 days to travel. Adding on the time for everyone to eat and rest, even at such great speeds, they would still require at least 3 days of journeying to reach their destination. The distance of the Silver City was apparent to all. Jun Moxie could not help but look at his third uncle with admiration. How fortunate! To find a wife that lives so far away, even if they quarreled and fought one day to the point of divorce. The girl's family wouldn't even know anything and may still think that they were very intimate. Not like me, who's surrounded by so many fierce uncles and brothers-in-laws. After an entire afternoon of high-speed flight, the group was already far away from Xiang. The bright sky had darkened into dusk, and the group finally landed to rest in a vast field. Vast as the sky and boundless as the wilds. Although it was currently the dead of winter, and the sight of the endless carpet of green could not be seen, one could still feel the immeasurable might of the earth which spread for as far as the eye could see. This huge grassland seemed to stretch forever, linking up with the sky and the stars. If one came here in the summer, the sight would truly be one to behold. A bonfire was lit and tents sprouted all over the place. Everyone had prepared plentifully and carried dried rations with them. After eating, they got together into groups to chat. Especially the beast kings that had recently transformed into human form. They sat together in large groups, laughing and talking joyously. These beast kings had only completed their transformation not long ago and were not practiced with speaking yet. Their conversations would often be filled with incomplete sentences laced with wuss and ahs. It was like they were speaking a different language and it was difficult to understand what they were saying. However, everyone was still laughing joyously and enjoying themselves. Guan Qinghan and Dongfang Wen Xian felt somewhat uncomfortable in contrast. Their cultivations were the weakest among the crowd and were even below the Silver City's little princess, Han Yen Meng. In addition, it was the first time they had flown so high in the sky. Although they had been protected by Mei Shuayan all the way, it was still very difficult for them to get used to the altitude completely. It was inevitable to feel exhausted. Thus, the two of them with Han Yen Meng went in to rest earlier. The night was deep, and the Dongfang three brothers had already raised a storm with their snoring long ago. However, Jun Moxie, Mei Shuayan, Jun Wuyi, Solitary Falcon, and Feng Wanyun were still wide awake. They were on the verge of killing their way into the Silver City, so Jun Wuyi's emotions were understandably charged. His heart was surging like the waves in the ocean, and it was naturally difficult for him to sleep. Jun Xie did not feel the need to sleep since he had the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Mei Shuayan was overseeing everything and naturally could not be careless. Furthermore, her cultivation was deep, and even if she did not sleep for 8 or 10 days, it would not pose a problem for her at all. Solitary Falcon and Feng Wanyun were battle maniacs, and with a huge war on their periphery, how could those two hot-blooded men sleep? The five walked together on the vast prairie, feeling the soft grass beneath their feet. Far away, a huge pyre lit up half the sky. Under the canopy of the cloudless starry sky, the five of them felt a unique calmness in their hearts. After a long time, Mei Shuayan broke the silence with her light voice. She smiled softly as she looked at Jun Xie. I could feel that you had a lot of things you wanted to ask me about since last time. However, I did not let you ask at that time. You can ask those questions now. Solitary Falcon and the rest turned to look at Jun Xie with strange gazes. Jun Xie laughed. You're right. There are indeed many questions in my heart that I've always wanted to ask you, but couldn't find the chance to. But now that you're telling me to ask them, I don't know what to say. Don't worry. Ask away. Everyone is present, and I believe that they would be able to help clear the doubts of a rookie like you. Mei Shuayan smiled teasingly and said. Everyone instantly laughed loudly and suddenly became interested in the topic. They found a place to sit down. Even the weakest of the five, Jun Wuyi, had reached the 4th level of Spirit Xian, so they naturally did not fear the cold. They directly sat down on the cold ground. Jun Xie smiled, raised his arms, and faced the vast grassland and said, to be honest, my questions would probably only appear extremely simple to all of you. For example, since Old Falcon and the Hurricane Swordsman are here as well, I shall not avoid the topic and speak directly. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 685. What is a Supreme? Jun Xie paused for a moment, then spoke up. Ever since I became aware of the existence of Xian Qi in this world, I was introduced to the known cultivation levels. Namely, the 9 levels of Xian Qi, followed by Silver Xian, Golden Xian, Jade Xian, Sky Xian, Spirit Xian and further. At that time, the Spirit Xian realm, also known as Supreme Spirit Xian, was considered the peak of martial cultivation. It was almost a publicly acknowledged fact that the 8 great masters were at the peak of the world, and that they were the strongest experts of the human race. Mei Shuayan plucked a stalk of dried grass off the ground and twirled it around her fingers absent-mindedly as she smiled and nodded. You're right. From the perspective of the common people, the 8 great masters are indeed peak-level experts. That is not an unfounded notion. But, as I progressed and I came to know Old Eagle, I learned from his mouth that Spirit Xian and Supremes were actually different things. In fact, there were even higher levels above the superior Supreme realm. It was from that day that I came to understand the words, the 12 levels of Spirit Xian, each level scaling to the sky. Jun Xie raised his eyes and looked at Solitary Eagle. Solitary Eagle rubbed his nose in response, somewhat embarrassed. Boasting about his knowledge in front of Jun Xie and boasting in front of Mei Shuayan were 2 completely different feelings. Solitary Eagle even felt as if he'd been sold out by a crafty someone. The 12 levels of Spirit Xian, each level scaling to the sky. There is indeed such a saying. Furthermore, it's completely reasonable to put it like that. Some Supreme Realm experts are stuck at the 5th level of Spirit Xian, unable to advance even if they spent their entire lives trying. Firstly, Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun smiled bitterly at each other at this. The two of them had fought and clawed desperately all their life, reaching the 4th level of Spirit Xian after so much struggle and breaking through to the Supreme Realm with great effort. They'd practically spent their entire life's strength on this task. But in Mei Shuiyan's mouth, they were not considered true experts yet, and were still in the foundational stage of cultivation. It was such a drastic realization. If they said that they were not disappointed, it wouldn't be deceiving the world, they would be deceiving themselves. Find out that there was only at the Supreme Realm can one truly, and it turns out that the 8 great masters that were considered the peak experts, because only at this level, one will develop a sensitivity toward the heaven and earth, allowing one to consider their path and even form their own. And I discovered that there's even a higher level, Solitary Eagle and the Supreme Realm experts from the 3 Holy Lands that appeared after our actual. One of you is like a reincarnation, that seems really, and the other is a sword fin, even if it's for the sake, but the true change should have appeared only after you broke through the 5th level of Spirit Xian. Right? In such Mei Shuiyan, what is the worth of the 8 great masters who are so high? Smiling. The two, Jun Moxie furrowed his brow. These two were formidable masters in the eyes of the martial world. But before Mei above the Venerable realm, they were like obedient primary school students listening to, and if such levels of because the other party indeed had the capabilities and the experience they lacked. This is why. Even the Solitary Eagle, does one have the ability to start a sect and become the lord of an area. However, they would only be able to lord over a small area. The true peak of cultivation in this world? Mei Shuiyan sucked in a deep breath, raised her head and smiled lightly. It looks like everyone is very curious about this. Originally, this kind of information was jointly restricted by the 3 Holy Lands and our Tian Fa forest. But now, since our 4 powers are already at odds, there's no harm in me telling you. She fell silent for a moment and continued. The 9 levels of Xian Qi were actually just a kind of initiation testing stage for young cultivators long ago. It was created by an immensely powerful figure long ago to test the cultivation talent of his disciples. The true starting point of cultivation is from Silver Xian onwards. This is why there's the saying, the 9th level and below are ants. This saying is quite close to its origins and is actually quite meaningful. Because if one could not break through the 9th level of Xian Qi within a certain amount of time, even if they managed to break through in the future, their cultivation would definitely not reach a high level in their lives. As for the time one took, it would naturally be better the shorter it is. The quicker one took to go through the 9 levels, the higher their cultivation talent. That means that their achievements in the future will be higher. Although the path from Silver Xian to the different layers of Spirit Xian are tough, it's actually doable and can be accomplished by almost anyone. As long as one puts in an equivalent amount of hard work and time, it's actually not very difficult. Because although there are obstacles and bottlenecks, everything can be slowly worn through with just the patient accumulation of Xian Qi. Only hard work and time is required. Thus, this entire process can only be considered as a period of cultivating one's mind and temperament. Or perhaps, one could say it's the foundational building stage. Even at the 4th level of Spirit Xian, one would not be considered as a true expert. Mei Shuiyan explained carefully. Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun smiled bitterly at each other at this. The two of them had fought and clawed desperately all their life, reaching the 4th level of Spirit Xian after so much struggle and breaking through to the Supreme Realm with great effort. They'd practically spent their entire life's strength on this task. But in Mei Shuiyan's mouth, they were not considered true experts yet, and were still in the foundational stage of cultivation. It was such a drastic realization. If they said that they were not disappointed, it wouldn't be deceiving the world, they would be deceiving themselves. Find out that there was Only at the supreme realm can one truly, and it turns out that the 8 great masters that were considered the peak expert, because only at this level, one will develop a sensitivity toward the heaven and earth, allowing one to consider their path and even form their own. And I discovered that there's even a higher level, solitary eagle and the supreme realm experts from the 3 holy lands that appeared after our actual. One of you is like a reincarnation, that seems really, and the other is a sword fin, even if it's for the sake, but the true change should have appeared only after you broke through the 5th level of spirit Xian. Right? In such Mei Shui Yan, what is the worth of the 8 great masters who are so high? Smiling. The 2, Jun Moxie furrowed his brow. These 2 were formidable masters in the eyes of the martial world. But before Mei above the Venerable realm, they were like obedient primary school students listening to, and if such levels of because the other party indeed had the capabilities and the experience they lacked. This is why. Even the solitary eagle, does one have the ability to start a sect and become the lord of an area. However, they would only be able to lord over a small area. The true peak of cultivation in this world? Mei Shui Yan sucked in a deep breath, raised her head and smiled lightly. It looks like everyone is very curious about this. Originally, Mei Shui Yan laughed disdainfully. As for the so-called supreme, that's just a misinterpretation of the true term. The original term for that realm was actually knowledge supremacy. Thousands of years ago, a person would only be considered to have known when they reached that stage and came into contact with a bit of the supremacy realm, taking the first step on the path of true experts. At that point, one would have a proper direction to focus their cultivation on. It's nothing but a starting point. But as generations passed, the knowledge supremacy realm somehow became thought of as the peak of cultivation. Slowly, the term changed to what you now know as supremes. Isn't that the biggest joke? Supreme. That's a term for those who reign unrivaled under the heavens. How would it be so easy to be a supreme? Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun could not stop their ears from turning red with shame at this. Although Mei Shui Yan was not talking about them, they still felt their faces turning hot, as if they had been slapped ruthlessly across the face. Every time I come out, I hear the words, Xian cultivator, this, the martial world, that. In my heart, I always find those words extremely funny. Can mere silver Xian and jade Xian be worthy enough to mention the words, Xian cultivator? What a ludicrous joke. Mei Shui Yan laughed and continued. From ancient times till now, the experts of Xian cultivation were defined by the word cultivator. I've mentioned earlier that only those who reach the supreme realm can be considered as having begun their journey in cultivation. Not just today, I've said the same thing many times in the past. These words did not come from me. They were truths that people from millennia ago practiced, to demarcate the cultivation realm of the experts among them. Only those at the supreme realm and above were referred to as Xian cultivators. Powerful experts of Xian Qi. That's a Xian cultivator. Mei Shui Yan smiled lightly. For the 12 levels of spirit Xian, only those from the 5th level and above had the qualifications to call themselves Xian cultivators. The 8th level is the first real step after that. That level is basically the same, but has some differences. Thus, there wasn't a clear name for it, and people in that realm were simply called superior knowledge supremacies. In other words, they knew more than they did before, and went one step forward. The real improvement in strength begins from the 12th level, and only those who'd broken through the 12 levels of spirit Xian would be Venerables. Then, how does one differentiate the levels between Venerables? This question was not asked by Jun Moxie. It was asked by Feng Wanyun. Venerable Mei's words today had dispelled many queries in their hearts. Venerables are split into 4 different levels as well. Every breakthrough in level will be accompanied with a round of body and marrow cleansing, as well the risk of the dreadful devil's bite. If one was slightly careless, their bodies would disintegrate and turn into smoke, leaving one to die without a corpse. The dangers in each breakthrough are truly difficult to describe with words. Each level would also attract a different heaven-earth tribulation. For example, advancing from the first to second level would cause one to suffer from the devil's bite, and that's already the easiest tribulation to pass. As long as one could guard their hearts against their biggest temptation, they would be able to transcend with ease. Even if they failed, they would only suffer from cultivation deviation and lose all their cultivation. Their lives would be at no risk. Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun both sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. The first tribulation that a Venerable would have to first break through was actually to face their most dreaded heart's demon. This was a huge matter that could cause all their cultivation to turn to dust. Moreover, Mei Shuayan actually said that it was the simplest, most relaxing, and the easiest trial to pass. As for breaking through from the second level to the third level, one would face the tempering trial of the 7 emotions, the burning heart flame. At that time, one's heart would experience the 7 emotions: joy, anger, sorrow, fear, love, hate, and lust. The corresponding emotions would form a series of realistic illusions in the heart, one after another, without pause. The moment it descends, one will feel a strange fire burning within themselves. The fire is seemingly illusory, but cannot be said to be false either. This kind of fire can be said to be both real and not. But once it begins burning, it can turn the entire person into ashes. This fire will not stop burning until the 7 emotions are over. Mei Shuayan looked at Jun Moxie with a complicated look and stopped. Everyone only felt their hearts beating rapidly at this point, and they practically did not dare to even breathe. Even the young Master Jun was no exception. Jun Moxie, who was in a partial state of shock, still noticed Mei Shuayan's strange expression. Cocking his head slightly, he asked, "What's wrong?" Mei Shuayan smiled lightly and hid her slightly reddened face. "That year I was injured. It was at the point where I was breaking through from the second level to the third level. Back then, my brother was encircled by the people from the elusive world of immortals and viciously killed. At that time, I was at the critical point of my cultivation. I had passed through 6 of the 7 emotions, and the burning heart flame had also been successfully controlled. But ultimately, the last emotion was not passed, and I couldn't make a full breakthrough. Thus, I was forcefully held back at the peak of the second level and couldn't advance any further." "Which emotion?" Jun Moxie asked quizzically. Then, as if realizing something, he immediately blurted out, "Right. It's love. You've never loved before. Without having been in love, how could you talk of the 7 emotions?" Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 686. Venerable and Saint. Yes. I'd never loved before, so I didn't know what it felt like. Thus, I couldn't pass that trial. The redness on Mei Shuayan's face deepened, but she still admitted the fact straightforwardly. "I had no choice but to exit from my cultivation and directly kill my way into the elusive world of immortals to demand an explanation from them. Although our strength was great, their numbers were too many. In addition, it was their territory, so they had the advantage. I fought against Mo Wu Dao for an entire day and night, before I was forced to retreat. But on the way back, I was actually ambushed by 10 superior supremes, risking their lives and going all out. Because of my previous exertion, I was not even at 80% of my peak strength. In addition, the long battle had caused me to become incredibly exhausted. I was not willing to kill as well, allowing them to finally succeed, inflicting a great wound on me. That grievous wound caused me to become weak for a long time. Despite slowly recuperating for many years, my injuries did not get better and could only be forcibly suppressed. Although I managed to recover from those wounds because of you, my strength had only returned to the peak of the second level, and I could not break through. After I returned to Tian Fa, I thought hard day and night. Mei Shuiyan's face had turned as red as a rose, but she still continued courageously. Because this was also part of her cultivation breakthrough experience. If she did not tell them the whole process truthfully, everyone might misunderstand and become misled when it became their turn to make the same breakthrough. Day and night, I pined, sleepless with longing. At that time, I finally understood the bone-cutting feeling, to miss somebody. From that, I finally understood what love is. On that very night, in that very moment, I instantly broke through that last trial of the 7 emotions, and stepped into the third layer of the Venerable realm. Mei Shuiyan said everything with a single breath. The group looked at each other with some disbelief. To think that breaking through from such a profound realm would be so difficult. The mysteries of this world were actually like that. Then, what is your current comprehension of love? Jun Moxie's eyes glinted as he asked with a smile. Mei Shuiyan smiled lightly and did not reply. This kind of question was not something that she could answer in front of others. However, her face turned gentler, and the way she looked at Jun Moxie was filled with tenderness, as if she wanted to reach out and hold Jun Moxie's heart tightly. Although Mei Shuiyan did not say it out, Jun Moxie instantly understood. Mei Shuiyan's love was the kind that loved in spite of everything. I can change for you, and I can disregard the entire world, for you. All I want, all I need, is only you. A selfless love. There was actually no need for her to say anything, and everyone could easily imagine for themselves just how fervent and intense must the love she harbored had been, for her to be able to break through the 7 emotions trial and directly ascend from the second level to the third level of Venerable. Jun Moxie's heart grew hot, as if a part of it had melted. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Mei Shuiyan's jade-like hands tightly. A rarely seen warmth appeared on Mei Shuiyan's face, and she allowed her hands to be held in Jun Moxie's gentle grasp. She felt the warmth of his palms and smiled happily. Beyond that, the trial from the third level of Venerable to the fourth level will have to do with the might of heaven and earth. Jun Moxie's body shook, as he suddenly thought of something. His eyes gleamed darkly as he raised his voice. Connected to the might of heaven and earth? Could it be the power of lightning? Exactly. Mei Shuiyan nodded with a serious look. From that level onward, one will truly be considered as a powerful expert that stands among the top. But if one is unable to withstand the lightning tribulation, their body will be burnt into ashes, and their soul scattered. Furthermore, every breakthrough a cultivator makes in the future will be accompanied by a lightning tribulation. And the stronger one is, the more powerful the tribulation will be. Back then, when the Saint King broke through, I heard that the lightning tribulation lasted for an entire day. Over half of the Venerable Realm Beast Kings and Saint Realm Beast Kings protecting him were killed and injured before they managed to barely pass through the trial at the end. As for the Saint King himself, he was nearly left with just a single breath of life after it ended. Saint Realm? Jun Moxie instantly picked out the keywords. Yes. Saint Realm. Above the Venerables are the saints. It's similarly split into 4 levels. However, it's still too difficult for me to differentiate those realms. In fact, I do not even dare to think about it. One thing that I know through the old sayings is that every breakthrough in level for a saint is 100 times more difficult than for a venerable. Mei Shuayan sighed and shook her head with a dark expression. There are definitely a few saint-level experts among the 3 holy lands. Those people are all legendary characters who participated in the last war for seizing the heavens. In fact, a few of them have even witnessed 2 wars for seizing the heavens. On the other hand, the Venerable and Saint Realm seniors of my Tian Fa forest are all stuck inside the misty illusory manor's beguiling mist, watching over the 9 Nether secret sanctuary. If that were not the case, even if the 3 holy lands had 10,000 more guts, they wouldn't dare to do anything to me. In that case, the Saint Realm is actually not the highest realm. Jun Moxie furrowed his brows in deep thought, before uttering in a slow manner. That's correct. Our previous Saint King had precisely broken through the 4th level of the Saint Realm and reached a new realm, an unprecedented height. Mei Shuayan had a worshipful expression on her face as she continued. From what I know, there's no one in the current world whose cultivation surpasses his. Perhaps there might be experts of the same level at the misty illusory manor and the 9 Nether secret sanctuary, but they have practically stopped appearing in this world. In other words, the Saint King is still not the highest. Jun Moxie's voice was bright and firm. He steadied his breath and continued. Above the realm of Saint King, there might still be many more levels, many more realms of power. To this point, I am certain. However, that's still a matter that's very far away for us. Everyone looked speechlessly at each other, and only Mei Shuayan nodded calmly. I didn't think that you would speak this way. According to the records, the Saint King had also left behind some words after he broke through, and those words were similar to yours. What words? Everyone asked in unison. To think that I've only finally begun my path today. That was what the Saint King said back then. Mei Shuayan recited slowly. But the moment they heard those words, everyone turned speechless. The Saint Realm was just a starting point. What kind of words were that? If he had just begun his path, then, what are they who were sitting here worth? The mysteries of the heaven and earth, as well as its possibilities, are endless. There's no need to be too adamant. Do the few of you know how far away that thing is from us? Jun Moxie suddenly began to laugh while everyone was engrossed in their thoughts. Smiling smugly, he raised a finger and pointed to the brightest star in the sky. How far? It must be extremely far away. Who can say for certain about something that's that high up in the sky? Everyone rolled their eyes and looked at him. They obviously knew that this young Master Jun was only trying to readjust everyone's mood. Yes, it's indeed very far away. I can guarantee that even if the fastest Xian beast started flying non-stop at its greatest speed from the time it was born, it might not be able to reach that star even if it flew like that for 10,000 years. Jun Moxie smiled lightly and continued in a shockingly energetic tone. But I can guarantee that someone has definitely gone up there before. Although the date of that feat might be hard to determine. The group was shocked speechless as they looked dumbly at him. This time, even Mei Shuayan revealed looks of disbelief. There's no need to feel so shocked. That person might not be from our Xian continent. Or perhaps, it might be someone who came from a place that none of you have even heard of before. Jun Moxie sighed lightly and continued. Perhaps you might not believe my words, but such a person definitely exists. With just a single hand, he would be able to lift up the entire Xian continent. With a flick of his fingers, Xian continent would cease to exist. These are not just some exaggerated words. As soon as his words came out, everyone agreed instantly that this little fellow must be suffering from a great fever and was speaking nonsense. Jun Moxie only smiled lightly and did not explain any more. After some time, he asked again, if experts are so plentiful as to be as common as the clouds in the sky, why are supremes regarded as the peak experts in this world? That's the thing that I want to know the most. There are a few reasons for that. Firstly, it's because of the requirements for the war for seizing the heavens. The three holy lands constantly elect experts for that purpose. Secondly, a person who reached the realm of superior supreme would have basically lost all interest in the mundane world, and most of the experts would detach themselves from society. Thirdly, once the common experts entered the three holy lands, they would be like you all. Mei Shuayan looked at Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun. You are extraordinary figures in the world and could walk uncontested and unrivaled across the mundane world. But if you were suddenly brought to a place where everyone's cultivation was higher than yours, and some powerful experts could even fight 100, 1,000 of you, how would you think? What would you do? Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun exchanged a glance and replied without any hesitation. We'll of course focus all our heart on cultivation. Who could stand being stepped under the feet of others constantly? The moment these words came out of their mouths, the two both gasped with realization. So that's how it was. As long as it was a person who had tasted some sort of accomplishment before, they would definitely not allow themselves to be stepped under the foot of someone else forever. This was especially so for these experts who had been so domineeringly unrivaled in the world they knew. Even if the person stepping over them was an even more impressive legend from the past, they would still be unresigned to such a fate. Thus, the moment they experienced something like that, realized how small they were, and how weak their strength truly was, it would be easy to understand the effort these people would put in at that point to regain their spots at the highest peak. Once a person developed that kind of mentality, how would they still have the leisure to roam the pugilistic world? There were also countless opponents to train against in those cultivation grounds. Even if one did not wish to compare notes with anyone, others would still seek them out to fight. Because of this, experts had become so rare on the mainland. As a result, supremes became the overlords of the mainland. Or in more apt words, the monkey reigns in the mountain in the absence of the tiger. Of course, much of the current situation can be attributed to the joint agreement held by the three holy lands. Long ago, the three saints who founded the three holy lands were all truly righteous people. They made the rule that superior knowledge supremacies and above were beings that had transcended the common world and would be banned from participating in the struggles of the common world. Because at the level of knowledge supremacy, a single person could easily handle an army of several thousands. Retrieving the head of a general protected by 1,000,000 soldiers would be as easy as flipping a hand. The lethality of such experts were simply horrifying to the common people. If they were allowed to act as they pleased, they would cause great calamity in the world. Experts at the knowledge supremacy realm and higher are also people like all of us. If they received any great provocation, it is not impossible for them to carry out a great slaughter. Throughout history, there were many cases like this, and the three holy lands would always dispatch their experts to deal with it. But the three holy lands have changed greatly after so many years, growing greedy of power. It's fortunate for the common people that they have still stood by this policy. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 687. The Unbelievable Nine Nether First Young Master. The principle came from the Supreme Covenant. If a superior supreme expert joins a secular war, we are allowed to join forces against him. It creates a check and balance that ensures the peace of the secular world. It's also one of the major reasons why high-level experts do not appear in the secular world. Because even for these experts, it's sometimes difficult to control their temper. If they lose control and gets killed by all of us, it's rather not worthy. Mei Shuayan sighed. The three holy lands then still lived up to their name. They were strong. They helped people while staying anonymous. They were focused on dealing with the external threats. And all of them were courteous and gentle. Look at them today. How are they worthy of being called holy? All they know is to fight for their reputation and double-cross each other to dominate the world. She sighed again. The war for seizing the heavens is near. But they're still busy trying to annihilate Tian Fa Forest, which was their ally, instead of preparing for the war. If something wrong is to happen at the Nine Nether Sanctuary, then I guess it will really be the end of the world. Then, who's that person who created the 9 levels to judge the talent of people? He must be very strong. Jun Moxie asked with a frown. When Mei Shuayan mentioned alluded to this person, she tried to be as ambiguous as possible. Jun Moxie was very aware of it. How could he miss information about such an important figure? The 9 levels of Xian cultivation on the Xian continent had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. If it was all started by this person, how magnificently powerful would he have been? Mei Shuayan's expression looked very awkward. She hesitated before finally saying, "What happened for the past 10,000 years is really a very big joke. In fact, the very technique of Xian Qi was passed down from him. He's the father of Xian Qi. No matter the 3 holy lands or the Tian Fa forest, all our training methods for Xian cultivation originated from him." Mei Shuayan smiled bitterly as she suddenly stopped. She looked like she didn't know what else to say anymore. "Who is he?" Jun Moxie's eyes twinkled as he lowered his voice to ask. 9 Nether First Young Master. Mei Shuayan uttered the name with difficulty. 9 Nether First Young Master? Judging from the name, he's from the 9 Nether Sanctuary? Jun Moxie was surprised. He didn't expect the place where the misty illusory manor and Tian Fa forest had been guarding with so much effort was the home to the father of Xian Qi. Yes. They're related. But you got it the other way round. The 9 Nether Sanctuary is actually named after the 9 Nether First Young Master. Generations of masters of the 9 Nether Sanctuary all called themselves 9 Nether XXTH Young Master. Now, it's the era of the 9 Nether 14th Young Master. Mei Shuayan looked rather anxious to say the name. What? I'm sure it's at least 10,000 years since the beginning of the history of the Xian continent. I believe that Xian Qi has been around before the first war for seizing the heavens. Then why it's only 14 generations for the 9 Nether Sanctuary? How's it possible? Jun Moxie immediately questioned it. He almost stood up. It wasn't only him. The others listening were also bewildered. No. The history of Xian Qi and the 9 Nether Sanctuary is much longer than 10,000 years. The reason is that the way they choose their successor is mysterious. We can't judge it with common sense. Or rather, no one is worthy commenting about it. Mei Shuayan explained slowly. Their strength is beyond comprehension. In fact, Xian Qi wasn't the only cultivation method on the continent long time ago. It's just that 9 Nether First Young Master emerged in the arena like a rising sun with his unbelievable strength. It wasn't long before he conquered the continent by himself, making him the only one in history that conquered the whole continent single-handedly. After that, He discarded all other types of martial arts by burning all the books and records about them which were carefully stored by many different countries and martial artists. He then gathered hundreds of thousands of practitioners of the other martial arts and took 10 years to remove all of their memories about the past techniques. From then on, there was only Xian Qi on the continent. Mei Shuayan said with an indescribable tone. Her words astonished everyone. Wow! Bravo! Jun Moxie's eyes flashed strongly as he took a deep breath in. It was the first time he was so shocked and admired someone so much. They could only look up to a figure like this until their necks hurt. Ever since Jun Moxie transmigrated to the Xian continent, he had never admired someone, not even Mei Shuayan. But this time, it was very sincere admiration toward the Nether first young master. It was not unreasonable. The Nether first young master was an expert among the experts. His prowess was unimaginable. All the crazy deeds he had done were even out of Jun Moxie's imagination. Then, in order to find his apprentice, he created the 9 levels of Xian Qi. In the end, he chose 4 young men with very different natures as his successors. 3 of them are the founders of the 3 holy lands. Mei Shuayan smiled bitterly. No one knows how long has passed. But the godlike Nether first young master completely disappeared from the world. As he was gone, the continent returned to peacefulness. But perhaps since it was the fate of the continent, the peace didn't last. 100 years later, the first war for seizing the heavens occurred. No wonder. I was wondering why the first young master would tolerate such threats from the outside world. Hey, so who's his 4th apprentice? I'm sure he's not any weaker than the founders of the 3 holy lands. Mei Shuayan's tale was so shocking that one would normally lose the ability to continue thinking logically. It was only since Jun Moxie was living his second life that he had a very strong heart. As a result, he was able to continue questioning amidst the dazzling facts. Of course, the last apprentice is even stronger, because he's the master of the misty illusory manner. Mei Shuayan said expressionlessly. Everyone was getting numb with the continuous shocks. For the first 3 wars for seizing the heavens, the 4 apprentices gathered all the heroes of the continent and had the Tian beast kings as their ally. They were able to badly hurt the forces of the invaders. But after the 3rd war for seizing the heavens, the 3 holy lands had become dominant and they had a large conflict with the descendants of the 4th apprentice. With the passage of time, the 2 sides finally split up and became enemies. A series of battles unfolded for a long time, but the descendants of the 4th apprentice was always weaker and disadvantaged. Eventually they were besieged by the overwhelming 3 holy lands and were in danger of being destroyed. Perhaps it was fate, but they found the entrance to the misty illusory manor just as they were about to be finished. The misty illusory manor is a magical location. It completely disappears from the world. It will only appear occasionally to find apprentices. It doesn't have a gender bias. It will take anyone who's fated to meet them. Apparently, there's something special about the misty illusory manor. They have become so much stronger since their first reappearance. The 3 holy lands could never have hoped to catch up with them. If not for the war for seizing the heavens, the 3 holy lands would have been eradicated long ago. They were about to settle everything once and for all after another war for seizing the heavens. But someone suddenly popped up from the Nether sanctuary. He called himself Nether second young master. Mei Shuayan smiled bitterly. His appearance stopped the conflict between the 4 forces, but created more trouble. Nether second young master's ambition was not even slightly less than Nether first young master. He announced his goal of conquering the world immediately after he appeared. But by then, The three holy lands and the misty illusory manor had formed their own systems and were unshakable. Moreover, the strength of the nine Nether second young master was strong, but incomparable to the nine Nether first young master. Furthermore, he was very arrogant and was not even slightly cautious. It sealed his fate. Also, the three holy lands and the misty illusory manor were the real successors of the first young master. They hadn't even settled it between themselves. So how would they have allowed someone else conquer the continent? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 688. 6 Venerables. So the nine Nether second young master experienced the full resistance of the three holy lands and misty illusory manor. Under the siege of all the people, the nine Nether second young master actually chose to deal with all of them single-handedly without any fear, trying to win with brutal force. Unfortunately, sometimes the power of man is limited, and eventually, he was defeated. He found an opportunity to escape and decided to harass the world with guerrilla warfare. It took more than 20 years for everyone to finally get rid of nine Nether second young master, but by then, everyone was exhausted. And then, around every 100 years, a person would pop out of the nine Nether sanctuary. Every generation was equally arrogant and wanted to conquer the world. And we could only fight him off with the power of the misty illusory manor. Therefore, the misty illusory manor and the nine Nether sanctuary became home to archenemies. So for more than 10,000 years, a total of 14 of them turned up. 14 madmen. Jun Moxie concluded. 13 exceptionally powerful madmen and an unstoppable successful one. The first master was also mad, but he succeeded. History is always written by the victor. So he became the father of Xiang, but the other 13 are merely madmen. Mei Shuayan sighed helplessly. The weirdest of all is the location of the nine Nether sanctuary. It appeared in the Tian Fa forest last time, and it brought a great deal of devastation to Tian Fa forest. The misty illusory manor again gathered forces to deal with the nine Nether 14th young master. He was injured and returned to the nine Nether sanctuary. He's the only surviving young master now. And as he returned, we finally found the location of the nine Nether sanctuary. So the misty illusory manor sealed the entrance of the nine Nether sanctuary. That was 400 years ago. The experts of the misty illusory manor sent 10 experts to place the mist to cover the entire nine Nether sanctuary. But in case of an emergency, they still needed experts to man the place. The nine Nether sanctuary appeared in Tian Fa forest, so we had no excuses. After discussing, the Saint King agreed to go. But we didn't expect that the mist only allowed entrance and no retreat. So the strongest forces of the Tian Fa forest were trapped inside. Mei Shuayan made a sad smile. So Tian Fa forest has become weaker until today. And in the past 100 years, there's occasionally a ground trembling sound emerging from the mist. I suppose it's the 14 young master trying to break the seal. Perhaps he will soon succeed. I wonder if we still have enough strength to deal with a madman like him after the low profile he kept for so many years. Everyone couldn't help hold their breath to keep quiet as Mei Shuayan spoke. The history was so astounding, and they would never have known all the dramatic events of the continent if not for Mei Shuayan. But why is there no myth about them in the secular world if all these young masters wreaked so much havoc? Jun Moxie asked the question that everyone was curious about. There are two reasons. Firstly, although they were all very ambitious, they killed no civilians due to their arrogance. Secondly, all the battles were staged in deserted places. Even when the young masters tried to escape, they would only hide in forests and mountains. so it's very difficult for the secular world to know. Mei Shuayan said seriously. You have to know that even large cities like Tian Xiang would be completely destroyed after a battle of these top experts. We cannot imagine how devastating those battles can get. Mei Shuayan smiled bitterly. It would cause uncontrollable panic to the secular world if the stories were really to spread. Battles among superior supremes would only be situated at remote locations. Let alone such battles. Just like how the three holy lands tries to defeat me, they will only choose forests and mountains. And just as what you've said, history is written by the victor. So why would the three holy lands or the misty illusory manor leak all this information? Wow! They are very strong and really have quite a temper. I like them. Jun Moxie looked like he was yearning for them. I really want to make friends with this 9 Nether 14th young master. Indeed. They do have a similar arrogant and crazy nature to you. But I guess it will remain as your dream. With what you have up your sleeves now, he can crush you with his pinky. Mei Shuayan rolled her eyes at Jun Moxie, showing her fullest contempt over his unrealistic dream. Haha. Everyone laughed. But they only felt more depressed. What they had heard from Mei Shuayan really impacted them. The ignorant ones were always more daring. The more they knew, the more insignificant they felt they were. Mei Shuayan said, "It's really none of our business and we don't have to struggle over it." Jun Moxie smiled faintly. Yes, we should focus on the path right before us. We aren't worth enough to consider what's up there while we are still on the lower side of the ladder. I guess we'll just stop thinking about this until perhaps we've reached a saint cultivation. Solitary Eagle laughed bitterly. Even a venerable is so distant for me, let alone a saint. It's really an eye-opener for me today. I'm so parochial, as are the 8 supremes. Sigh. He sighed in a demoralized manner. Solitary Eagle. This is a bad attitude for you. Indeed. Knowing all this gives you immense pressure. But do you know why all the experts of the 3 holy lands lost all their greatness and confidence while they were still in the secular world? Mei Shuayan said slowly. Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun were stunned and pondered. They began to know this, and the same thought and attitude grew within them. They felt that their past arrogance was so laughable that they become decadents. That's why they've lost all their strength and character, turning despicable and exposing their inner evil to the point of no return. That's why a bunch of superior supreme became inferiors who have lost all of their dignity. I hope the same tragedy will not replay on the 2 of you. Mei Shuayan was serious. Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun were suddenly enlightened as they showed their shame about their behavior. Suddenly, they stood up and bowed at Mei Shuayan. Thank you, Venerable Mei, for the warning and enlightening the 2 of us. We will remember your words with utmost appreciation. If we can improve more, it will be attributed to you, Venerable Mei. Mei Shuayan sat there without moving and accepted their bow with comfort. She smiled and said, "Good that you understand. It's self-containment. As long as you understand and don't lose confidence, then I'm sure there will be a place for the 2 of you among the top experts. If not, you will fall and become decadents like those people. It's all up to you. As for them, they can't even adjust their attitudes properly. It's fated for them to end up like this. There's no need to be pitiful for them." Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun bowed again with gratitude. Jun Moxie laughed to ease the atmosphere. Let's not talk about this anymore. It's all personal effort. And everything is possible. 1.5 days and we will reach Blizzard Silver City. Shuayan, how many saints do you think the 3 holy lands will send this time? Mei Shuayan frowned. I'm thinking about it as well. But according to their usual protocol, the masters of the three holy lands have to agree on the appointment of saints. After all, saints are scarce and treasured by all of them. Even the three holy lands don't have many of them, so perhaps there may not even be one. But perhaps they will mobilize the saints to deal with your teacher. Oh. Jun Moxie was concerned. What if there were really saints going for his grandfather? It was all a facade at home. As dawn broke, the army was ready to move again. They mounted the flying beasts and continued the journey. 8,000 kilometers. All zooming past in a day of flight. It was getting colder as they neared Blizzard Silver City. Far in the distance, a permanent whiteness appeared in sight. The snowy mountains. Blizzard Silver City. We're coming. Big Bear was very excited as he flung his limbs around on the back of a giant crane. He yelled very loudly and the sound waves washed away all the fluffy clouds beside. The noise was greeted by Han Yen Meng's eye rolling. And then a buff man on the back of the adjacent crane looked over at Big Bear with great affection, just like how a lady would look at a hero. Of course Big Bear was not aware of this. Jun Moxie praised Big Bear on the back of the Eagle King. What a holler! What a sound wave! Wave after wave, waving the ground stronger than the previous waves. The Eagle King almost lost control and headed right down. Bro, what are you talking about? Can you say something that doesn't short-circuit my brain? We're 10 kilometers above the ground, it's very dangerous. It was evening, and they were only 250 kilometers away from the snowy mountains. They were already in the realm of blizzards and snow. A couple of miles forward and it would be the territory of Blizzard Silver City. Mei Shuayan whistled and all the Xian beasts landed. A night of rest and they would be facing Blizzard Silver City tomorrow. Just as they finished setting up the tents. Is Venerable Mei of Tian Fa here? We are old friends of you, and we hope you will meet us. An elegant voice drifted over, and everyone was shocked. They had just arrived and visitors were already here? That was quick. Jun Moxie stood up and signaled for no one to follow and went side by side with Mei Shuayan. Suddenly, 6 immense presences crashed down, making it hard for everyone to breathe. Just as the pressure filled the entire atmosphere, 6 figures suddenly appeared in the distance. They looked like black dots on the snowy fields. The black dots slowly became beans, then fists. With a blink of eye, they were within 5 meters of the couple. All of them looked serious and stern. 12 eyes were sharp like lightning as they stared at Mei Shuayan and Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie suddenly felt that as if his clothes were gone, and even his soul was being watched by these stares. Jun Moxie was shocked as his muscles tightened. He quickly called out the art of unlocking heaven's fortune and the fear suddenly went away. They moved like wind. Looking at the 6, Mei Shuayan's pupils suddenly contracted as her vigilance boomed. Her hostility immediately kicked in. All 6 of them were top experts. 6 Venerables. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 689. Imminent Turmoil in Xiang City. In Xiang City, the 3 princes received dreamlike surprises. Recently, they witnessed their great and wise father being humiliated, causing him to become more depressed with each passing day. They also witnessed the imperial family on the verge of collapse and the position of the emperor that they longed for years becoming a source of danger they couldn't handle. They felt helpless against Jun Moxie's arrogance and unscrupulous behavior. Just as they were completely lost, they received the greatest aid in their life. It was the greatest opportunity for their comeback. The three holy lands. It was especially a relief for the second prince. He had originally been unhealthy and he was shocked by Big Bear and Earthcracker. His most supportive subordinates left him as they succumbed to the pressure of facing the rising Jun family. Even Qingde Chao was killed, he was bitten to death. How could the prince forget such an appalling reality? So for these few months, he had always been on the bed. When the guards reported that Li Yuran was here, he was stunned for a while. Welcome him. Quick. The second prince rolled off his bed barefooted. His whole face explicitly revealed his yearning for Li Yuran. He had always wanted to win Li Yuran over but failed. If Jun Moxie knew about this, would he relate this scene to that of Cao Cao welcoming Suyu barefooted one? No. How could such a useless guy be compared to the ruthless warlord? Your Highness, how are you doing lately? Li Yuran came in, standing upright. He didn't greet the prince properly. On his face was still the usual elegant simile that was comforting to anyone. Behind him were 5 old men. All of them bore the aura of an expert. Beside them were 3 middle-aged men in linen who looked as ordinary as one could imagine. The only difference was their exceptionally bright eyes. You ran. I've been missing you so much. The second prince held Li Yuran's hand ardently. So much that even my meals tasted awkward recently. Who are they? A flash of disgust zapped across Li Yuran's eyes, still well hidden by his gentle smile. Your Highness. They are great people. Let me introduce you to them. This is Elder Ma. This is Elder Lu. Elder Niu. Elder Zhu. Elder Yang. Your Highness. They are all supreme experts. As he reached the end, Li Yuran emphasized each word with a solemn tone. They are my seniors in the Supreme Golden City 5 Supremes. We're here to assist you in getting the throne. Supremes. The throne. The second prince immediately trembled. He looked like swaying noodle as he suddenly burst into tears. I, Yang Dan, can be so successful? The heavens feel sorry for me. After so many years, I have finally found strong support to fulfill my dreams. They are supremes. They are the top of the world. Didn't Jun Moxie become so arrogant after he struck up a relationship with Solitary Eagle? But now, I have 5 when you only have 2 counting in Feng Wan Yun. Ha ha ha. He had been hopeful, then hopeless. But now, it was restored. The second prince felt that his life wasn't easy. So many ups and downs. So thrilling. Seeing how excited the second prince was, the 5 old men all showed contempt in their eyes. Isn't it just a secular throne? How many years can you survive even if you really made it? Why so excited? How absurd. With what you have, you're trying to deal with Jun Moxie. Are you nuts? Even the 5 of us would run away immediately from him if not for the support from the Supreme Golden City. The 5 Supremes simply nodded coolly in response to the second prince's flattering. The second prince greeted each of them with a big grin. As he reached Elder Yang, he said, Elder Yang, he. Didn't expect that we've got the same ancestry. Elder Yang was a bit anxious. It wasn't because of the second prince. It was because of the 3 saints behind him. Why he can't stop talking rubbish? How long am I going to let the 3 saints behind me act as servants? I don't want to make them mad. Upon hearing what the prince had said, he replied without even thinking. No. We don't have the same ancestry. Your yang is the yang for poplar tree. It's the dead yang. Mine is the yang for sheep that go baa. It's the moving yang. Ahem. The three saints behind him couldn't help coughing. Wow, that's really funny. You're Yang Dang. One of the saints couldn't hold on anymore and asked with great curiosity. Why did the emperor give his son this name? Yang Dan too. Wow, so talented. Yes. Yes. I'm Prince Yang Dan. Who are you? The second prince asked hopefully as he looked at the three middle-aged men. He hoped that they would also be supremes. Then he would have 8. With supremes, I have everything in the world. Unify the world. I will be the only emperor. They are my servants. From now on, can we live in your house? Li Yuran smiled gracefully with a tone that made him sound like the benefactor. It wasn't that he wanted to hide it, but for someone like the second prince, supremes were the strongest. If the second prince was told that they were the much stronger saints, perhaps he would only be very confused. The second prince no longer cared whether Li Yuran's tone sounded right or not. He was completely dazed by the ecstasy as he agreed. But he wasn't totally confused. As he asked, I'm so delighted that I can have the elders from the Holy Land to assist me. But I know that I can't accept your kindness without doing anything. What do you want me to do? He had made up his mind that no matter what it was or whether it could be done, he would do it. He would pay any price to make them stay with him. They were his only hope. It's not very complicated. Li Yuran laughed. We just want some of your secular influence's assistance in what we are doing. So I want some authority. No problem. From now on, you can do anything you want with my power. You don't even have to ask me. The second prince gritted his teeth for a while before he finally stomped on the floor and made the almost absurd decision. He completely let go. If one couldn't let go of his kid, he couldn't capture the wolf. If one couldn't let go of his wife, he couldn't catch the pervert. So, the second prince went all out today. One last shot. Okay. That's a wise move, Your Highness. Li Yuran smiled comfortably as they shook their hands. Now I want to give an order. Get me all the information of everyone related to the Jun family. Li Yuran said slowly while smiling. No problem. I will tell them now. The second prince agreed immediately and went out. At the same time, Xi Jinghong led 5 supremes and 3 more ordinary-looking men to settle in the house of the third Prince Yang Xie. And a similar group of men from the elusive world of immortals entered the house of the first Prince Yang Qiu. The 3 princes of Tian Xiang had officially become the 3 biggest puppets in history. And the most willing puppets. An unprecedented turmoil was growing in the Tian Xiang city. The 3 princes, whom Jun Moxie called Goat Ball 3, Goat Egg, and Goat GG 4, would finally have a chance to retaliate. Heartless Venerable Du Ju, Venerable of the Edge of the World Xiao Tianya, Venerable of the Broken Sword Hua Feng Wen, Venerable of the Defected Saber Chu Wu Qing, and the Pervert Venerable Lu Qiu. Mei Shuayan looked at the 6 men and uttered their names as her face became more serious. Jun Moxie felt his palms wetting. My goodness. They really prioritize me as a problem. 6 Venerables. Wonderful memories you have, Venerable Mei. You remember all of us. Impressive. The Venerable of the Broken Sword Hua Feng Wen smiled and said in a tone that was similar to the reunion of long-lost friends. His beard and white robe swayed with the wind. All of you are Venerables and top experts. How can I forget? Mei Shuayan smiled faintly. She squinted her eyes to look at them with shrewdness. What are you here for though? We are here to, negotiate. The Venerable of the Broken Sword Hua Feng Wen said casually with a gentle smile. Negotiate what? Mei Shuayan frowned as she exchanged a look with Jun Moxie. Venerable Mei, the three holy and one ferocious lands always followed the rule of not getting involved in secular conflicts so as not to break the balance. For you to join in the conflict between the Jun family and Blizzard Silver City, you're breaking the rule. I'm sure if the seniors of Tian Fa knew about this, they wouldn't be happy. So we're here to ask you to leave and we will pretend nothing happened. Hua Fengwen was still smiling gracefully. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 690. The Pervert Venerable. Leave? Hua Fengwen. What if I say no? Mei Shuayan smiled coldly. Well, then it would be very unfortunate, Hua Fengwen said in a remorseful manner. Mei Shuayan scoffed at him. She said sharply, follow the rules? Hee. You should know that it's also a rule to prioritize the safety of the Xian continent. The four sides are not allowed to have conflicts, let alone kill each other. The perpetrator would be targeted by everyone. But look at you now. You are trying to obliterate me, and so ruthlessly that you have resorted to all different ways to do it. Ambushing. Assassination. Why didn't you talk about the rules then? And now you are here, saying that you are concerned about the balance of the world. Are all of you from the elusive world of immortals hypocrites like Mo Wu Dao? If you want to kill me, just say so. I'm ready to confront you. There isn't a need for you to find a proper reason to glorify yourselves. Hua Fengwen's expression didn't change. He laughed and said in an earnest way, I'm sure you are mistaken, Venerable Mei. The four sides have always been peaceful and supportive of each other. How could there be such despicable behavior such as ambushing you? Venerable Mei, I'm sure you didn't see clearly. Am I not clearly seeing the six of you here? Mei Shuayan looked at him scornfully. We are here to kindly remind you about what you shouldn't do so you won't make an unforgivable mistake and regret it, Hua Fengwen exclaimed and said seriously. We have to know that there's no way to avenge all our loved ones. It will become an endless cycle. Venerable Mei, don't put yourself in a situation of assured destruction. Even if it's assured destruction, it's my problem. It's none of your business, isn't it? Mei Shuayan said coldly. If you don't have anything else to say, you may leave now. Mei Shuayan didn't hesitate to ask them to leave. She was completely disappointed with the three holy lands. It had developed into the situation now, and even the three holy lands had a toll of nearly 100. But they were still finding ridiculous excuses to justify their actions. How disgusting. These hypocrites were worse than the explicitly wicked. We've gone so far to persuade you. Venerable Mei, are you still indifferent about it? Are you going to break the rules and neglect the dwellers of the continent? Are you really going to insist? Hua Fengwen smiled at her. That will bear very undesirable consequences. He sounded gentle, but it was still able to pressurize the foe. So what? Mei Shuayan's face went colder. Her intangible authority suddenly expanded its area of influence. It intensified the notion that she was untouchable and any move that infuriated her would bring about destruction. You want to show me consequences with only the six of you? Are you overestimating yourselves? You are indeed eloquent. Venerable Mei. Impressive. The pervert Venerable Lu Qiu could not hold on anymore. His eyes were squinted on his hideous face as he looked at Mei Shuayan. Venerable Mei always wore a black robe that covered even her face. I've never knew that Venerable Mei was such a beauty. How disrespectful I was. Haha. Mei Shuayan frowned. It sounded increasingly provocative to Jun Xie. Looking at the perverted stare and lustful face of the old man, his inner fire was ignited. All he wanted was to chop off the ugly face to use as a chamber pot. He stepped forward and looked gloomily at the pervert Venerable and snorted. Pervert Venerable? Lu Qiu? Yes. That's me. Lu Qiu's red eyelids twitched as he scrutinized Jun Xie before he finally laughed. You're Jun Xie? That boy who follows Venerable Mei and doesn't want face? That's me. Jun Xie tilted his head to look at him. What do you want? Hee. You think you are suited to the glamorous Venerable Mei? You're really aiming for the moon. Get lost before it's too late. Lu Qiu was very blunt with it. He was naturally a pervert and his nature never changed. But when he joined the three holy lands, he lost the chance to fulfill his lust. It was an awful experience for him. So when he saw Mei Shuiyan, years of suppressed lust were triggered. The churning feeling within him made him lose control of the thing between his crotch. His face was tomato red and he breathed heavily. As he saw that Jun Xie was acting like a protector of the lady, he was more furious. What about me? I'm so handsome and such a gentleman. When I walk on the streets, everyone is attracted by my charm. Girls can't wait to throw themselves into my embrace. At least I don't have a problem finding a wife. What about you? Jun Xie looked at him with contempt. It was a merciless blow. What about me? Don't I look fine? The saddest thing about Lu Qiu's life was that he looked too ugly, so he wasn't really a womanizer. He always vented his lust forcefully, but he felt it was unsatisfying as well. He couldn't alter how he looked, so he felt very helpless. So when Jun Xie mentioned the scar of his life, he was naturally mad. He roared and gas near him rapidly expanded, sweeping up all the snow and ice around him. I see. You agree that you look very disgusting. Of course. Even if you are ashamed to look at yourself through mirrors, you can see your own reflection when you pee. Look at your face. It's like a rotten persimmon that was ruptured by the sharp edge of a rock you had fallen on and then squashed by a pair of stinky bare feet. Jun Xie moved his mouth as he pointed his finger at Lu Qiu and commented in great detail. You are rotten to the extreme. I admire your parents. How did they even give birth to someone like you? I especially admire that they didn't choke you to death when they saw your face. They really had endured something big. They even brought you up. My goodness, how could they live their lives seeing your disgusting face every day? How admirable. Jun Xie looked so amazed as if it was a miracle that he couldn't comprehend. By now, even Du Ju and Jun Xie couldn't help laughing. Jun Xie's words really showed no mercy. It could anger people to death and corpses until they rolled around in coffins. Jun Xie. I'll kill you. Lu Qiu bellowed as he almost vomited blood. With his rising anger, the ribbon that tied his hair was torn. His hair stood up and the snow beside him was literally tossed up layer by layer like lava spurting out. His anger was apparent. His figure flickered as his body moved charged forward, creating 5 shadowy figures of himself on the path. He was now above Jun Xie and his hand reached for Jun Xie's head. It was the wrath of a Venerable. The other 5 Venerables wanted to stop him but it was too late. Lu Qiu was about to crush Jun Xie's skull. Lu Qiu didn't hold back as he was driven mad. He really wanted to kill Jun Xie. The other Venerables might be concerned about Jun Xie's teacher and the safety of the 3 holy lands. But Lu Qiu had always been a despicable character and never cared about consequences. He even considered escaping after killing the kid and leaving the hot mess to the Three Holy Lands. He was tired of the Three Holy Lands anyway. He wanted less restrictions so he could fulfill his lust. Anyone that laughs at my looks will have to die. How can this kid be the exception? So he was being very sadistic this moment. And Venerable May is so beautiful. If I can't get her, you can't either. Hee hee. Figures flashed and a boom could be heard. The other 5 Venerables felt their scalps going numb. It could be clearly seen that 2 hurricanes had merged, devouring the figures. The snow on the ground was being sucked in like weightless dusts, producing a tornado that stretched for 50 meters. Jun Moxie was still standing there, but Mei Shuayan was gone. It was obvious. Mei Shuayan moved the very moment Lu Qiu did. Just as Jun Moxie wanted to fight back, Mei Shuayan had done so first. So now they were in combat. Mei Shuayan took the advantage of her yearning for Jun Moxie to break into the 3rd tier of Venerable. Her love for Jun Moxie was now so deep-rooted that she saw Jun Moxie as the one and only of her life. How could she allow others hurt the love of her life? Definitely intolerable. As long as I'm alive, I don't allow others to hurt my Moxie. Lu Qiu was wrathful, but so was Mei Shuayan. So as they fought, they soon rose up into the air. The sheer intensity of the battle produced a hurricane and they began exchanging blows inside it, harder and faster, but were still unable to yield a result. This story will be continued to chapter 691. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.